Hello, everyone, once again to a new episode of Archiologist. Hi, Sebzihor. Thank you so much for listening and continuing with this adventure that is growing more and more every day. Today, we have another great architect and creator of the design platform, The Archiologist, which is already established and has more than 120,000 followers and is counting. So, dear audience, I cannot say anything else but introduce my good friend, Maria Flores. Hi, Maria. It's as always a pleasure to have you here and always have you in the show in Arquitectura. So welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you for, letting me be a part of this amazing adventure that you embarked on. It's so wonderful to be here. How are you? How's everyone? I'm so excited.
Well, yeah, I was actually going to ask you that. I'm fine, It's been a great opportunity to have all these conversations with these amazing creatives because I've had the chance to get in the minds of so many people and just observe and listen into what makes them who they are. And it's always so interesting because in the so many people, they're architects or the cinematographers or graphic designers, and you know that they're professional, but it's that story that makes them special, and you see them in a new light. So I hope I know that we're gonna see a new light of you because we're gonna hear your whole story basically.
Do you want me to go way before I was even born? When I was born?
Man. Yeah, really? Go ahead. I just want to hear your entire, what makes you you?
Okay, I like that. So I think that you and I actually share a similar story because our parents are in the same industry that we're in. So I was born in a family of architects. My dad is an architect and my mom is an architect. And I think that, growing up by seeing them do what they loved and seeing them be very passionate about what they do, it was almost like I kept asking myself, hey, what if I give this a try? And obviously, I think that children that come from parents that are in the same industry as them, at one opportunity, they wanted to rebel. They wanted to say, no, I don't like this, or maybe I don't want to follow in my parents' footsteps, It always happens.
I ended up with architecture, but yeah, tell me, you grew up in that environment, and who between your parents is the one that inspires you the most, or in that part of your story?
Yeah, it always happens, that as we were saying, I thought, okay, I like this, but then I don't want to do it because they're doing it. And I realized, growing up that I lived in such a design-oriented family that at the end of the day, it wasn't something like, oh, my parents are doing this, so I want to do it. It was more like, I love how passionate they are, and I want to also feel passionate about the things that I do. So I went into the same industry as them, and I love it. Completely love it. The one that inspires me the most is my dad, because he's the one that has had more trajectory with architecture. My mom studied it, but then she didn't really continue it further along. Now she's a teacher in a school for kids, so she's kind of doing the same thing that I'm doing now, also teaching others. But my dad, I hope my mom doesn't listen to this, but my dad is the one that inspires me the most. Yeah. But
I have a question also, Maria. Did you study, because originally you're Venezuelan? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you came to the US since very young, or in that part?
Yeah. So I came with my family, with my parents. I'm the only child, just like you. How funny. I came to the United States when I was 12. So, that culture from Venezuela, I think it was very present for me when I started. But I always try to remember, hey, I come from this country and I love this country, and I have to, make the people in that country proud.
Of course. No, and in that sense, when you decided to study architecture, what was it about it that makes you so interested? Because okay, you have your parents and you saw it, and you were saying about that how they were passionate and you wanted to be passionate, but why architecture and not something else?
Okay, that's a good question. I think I went into architecture because this goes back to my parents. I think my parents always influenced me to be very creative. So instead of telling me, hey, you have to be the best in sciences and math and stuff like that, my parents would literally buy me watercolors, color pencils, a sketching pad. Every year I would have just like an influx of materials to paint and to draw. And I feel like that made me very creative from a very young age. And then when I went to high school,
you were able to express yourself in that.
Exactly. Yeah. So when I went to high school, I also took a ton of art classes. And then when I graduated, funny thing is that when I graduated high school, I said, I'm going to go into journalism.
Oh.
So, yeah. I changed completely. That's funny. Yeah. I was like, I don't want to do architecture. Well, it wasn't even on my mind. That's the thing. I didn't know that I wanted to do architecture. I was just like, you know what? I want to be a journalist. So I started at the university that we both went to, FIU.
Yeah.
I started as a journalist major.
Oh, wow.
And
I didn't know that.
2 weeks inside. I feel like nobody knows this, but 2 weeks into the program, I was sitting in class listening to all these professors talk about journalism and stuff like that. And I was drawing in my notebooks. I was just like, oh, this space is so pretty. I wonder this, and that. And then one night I had like a crazy revelation and I was like, okay, maybe what if I give architecture a try? So that's when I went into architecture because I've just been creative. And I feel like that just creativity leads to the architecture field a lot.
Yeah. And in that sense, and in that part of the question, I just wanted to ask you, because since you're so analog oriented, is sketching the way that you get inspired, or do you have any other special method?
It is how I get inspired 100%. Yeah,
and
you're absolutely right.
And when you start making the sketching to get inspired, do you see yourself in first person, second person, or do you imagine it for someone else? Like, what do you sketch? Like, where do your ideas come from?
This is an amazing question. I have never thought about it, but
making you think, right?
Yeah. I think that so when I first start sketching, it depends on, what I want to sketch. For example, I get a lot of inspiration from sketching precedents of architecture, and I've been doing it lately a lot, where let's say Casa del Fascio in Milan, I kind of start sketching an axonometric, then the plans and stuff like that, kind of like building onto that narrative of how is this thing built, what is the story behind this piece of architecture, and how is this going to help me to understand what I want to do, right? So I've been sketching a lot lately, and that's obviously what I have done in the past. But when I do sketch, I think more about the architect that did this, right? What was their intention, and how do I figure out what that intention is by just throwing some lines on a sketch pad, So I think about the architect's intention, how they developed this project, and how can I take from that project and learn from it.
Right, and this is coming from you because now you're a teacher and you're...
Yeah.
And I wanted to dig in more into that because I feel this is also kind of becoming part of yourself because of what you created with with Archiologist.
If you want to give me Arquitectura, please.
No, I'm gonna cut that. I messed up. Sorry. Wait, let me just go back to them. Oh my God, I just like...
You should leave it though. It was funny.
With everything that you're creating with Archiologist, and now it has become like a developed platform, and it has, I think it has more than 4 years already created.
Since 2018, since 2016.
So 4 years.
October 2016. Is that 4 years?
Yeah,
No,
almost 4 years.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, I made my math. I was like, I remember her making it, and and I just wanted to dig into that, and that part of, since you're a professor now, you're basically teaching students about how to think architecturally.
Yeah.
Where this inspiration came from, you making the Archiologist, or is it part of you, or is something in you about that journalist part that want to give information to people?
Yeah, it's funny that you mention it, because I really had never thought about why I did the Archiologist. I really, when I was doing it and months later, I didn't really know why I started it. It was kind of like, when you start Arquitectura as well, it's something that you have inside that you just want to do something different, right? And for you, I'm sure it started just as a way of helping others and just how to put information out there to help people. And I think that in my case, when I started the Archiologist, I was in architecture school. I was in, I think, my third year of architecture school. So when I started it, it was just this idea that I had, hey, what if I start writing articles? Because I like writing a lot.
Right, so, yeah.
Yeah, I like writing.
By the way, guys, if you guys don't know this, obviously you do, but the Archiologist is also a magazine. So yeah. That's a part of information that I just wanted to provide. Yeah,
that's good. So yeah, I like writing a lot and reading about architecture and stuff like that. So I honestly just did this platform in order to, give people something to read about my travels, about the things that I thought about precedents. And
so it was something more personal.
Yeah, it was definitely something more personal. I don't know if Arquitectura for you is a personal adventure, but I think that for me, the Archiologist was a very personal thing that I wanted to create. And all of a sudden, people started telling me like, hey, what if you, people from different parts of the world, by the way, they started telling me like, I remember the first girl, I'm not gonna say her name, but I clearly remember she's from California and she had just done her thesis. So for me, to some girl that I don't know, who's obviously ahead of me in life, to be telling me, hey, can you publish my project? I was like, this is really cool. So I started asking people to share their projects with me. And then I would just publish it in a website that I created off of like WordPress back then, which literally costed me nothing at all. And that's how it started. And all of a sudden I realized, hey, I interview these people. I tell them, how do you do this? Tell me about yourself and all this stuff. And they give me a piece of information, like the work that they have done, which is incredible. You don't just give that piece out to anyone. And that's how I realized, hey, maybe this is that journalist side of me that wanted to do something, and it just merged together. It was crazy, literally, like me figuring that out. Incredible.
And since you were saying that, okay, this normally is a question that people find hard to answer, but I think you already kind of told me your answer, but I just wanted to focus on, since you, in another reality, another Maria, in another world, if you couldn't do architecture or journalism, because I already said journalism is so indebted to you, who would you be? What would you like to do?
Wow. Okay, let's see.
Think about Maria. Think about this Maria that like wakes up late, like she's lazy, or like she's not lazy, or she just likes something else. Like, who will be this Maria 2.0?
I think that if I hadn't done not journalism, but if I hadn't discovered that journalistic part, and if I hadn't discovered that architecture part of me, I think that possibly now I like psychology a lot, and it's something that it makes me kind of like analyze myself and other people. And I feel like psychology is such a beautiful profession, you know, just to be able to help people in need, or just, you know, being that person that you can talk to others and them trusting you. I feel like I like how psychology works. And
in what sense?
In the sense that you can help others in need. And I feel like that's one of my points that I want to achieve in my life, is being able to help people that need it the most. And I feel like that's why I also became a professor, because it's like, you know, architecture, it scratches that want of design and wanting to build something and learning and understanding how the design world works. And then my professor side, it's about taking that knowledge that I know from architecture and applying it and helping people, helping students that are just starting out their career understand how design works. And to me, I think that being a professor scratches that need of helping others. And it's like, and
right.
It's extremely rewarding, you know. If I didn't become a professor, I don't know how I would view the architecture career, because it's very difficult and it's very cold. I mean, that's something that a lot of people say, and it's true in certain aspects, that the architecture world is very cold and it's very hard, you know?
Yeah, because in the sense of like, you have to think for yourself as a designer to be able to be special among many others, because it's such a big career and many people do it.
Very competitive too.
And very competitive. And I agree with the thought of that it's harsh, but it's also nice when you see like you're thinking about making yourself more like a humanitarian.
Yeah.
And carving the kids of the future.
Yeah.
And like, how is it working with first year students? Because I remember myself, and I'm not a good example, because I always was the type of person of, and when you're an immigrant, you start thinking like, oh, I'm taking an American spot, so I need to be more competitive than anyone. Yeah. And I just wanted to ask you your like experience as a professor.
Well, it's teaching first year students is, I wouldn't say that it's hard, but it is challenging in the sense that you don't want these kids that are fresh and that are new and that have so many creative juices flowing in their head, and they want to be creative and all that stuff. You don't want to take that away from them. And I feel like I've seen in certain cases where their first year makes them act cold toward architecture and makes them just design like a concrete box.
Yeah, get AutoCAD and then start making blocks.
Exactly. So
that's hard.
It is challenging in the sense that you don't want these students to view the architecture profession badly, because it's the first year that they have in order to say, hey, I completely love this or I completely hate it. So how I like to teach them and make them understand is that architecture is very rewarding, and you can be creative all you want.
Yeah, and how do you even like inspire your students? Because we're talking about inspiration, and you're saying like, okay, you find it through sketching. Do you take, because it's hard as a professor just taking the time to observe each student and
it is hard,
individualize their curriculum. How do you make the right pedagogy for each student, so they can see that architecture is an individual career, and you don't have to think it as something that is mass created. I just wanted to ask you in that sense of, do you as professors talk to each other, at least in where you are, which is in Miami-Dade College, and how to make this right curriculum that could help the students? And like, do you curate it per semester, or do you do something special? I don't know. I'm asking you.
Okay, good questions. I think that, okay, so to answer the first question that you put forth, which was, how do I inspire my students, and how do I know what each of them individually need? Because every person is different, every designer is different. And so I think, so the very first thing that I do is to let them know that the studio is a collaborative studio. It's not individual, and they should be able to go to their classmates and ask them for their advice, and they should be okay with getting criticized, and they should be okay with giving criticism away, because that's what makes designers better. You know, hearing from what others have to say about your work, and then saying something about others' work, obviously in a very nice manner, right? So that's the very first thing. The second thing is that I inspire them by sitting with them individually or in groups, and then drawing with them so that they can find comfort in drawing and sketching out their ideas. You know, I think that architecture should be able to be a very fast process of ideas, and there's some opportunities that students cannot, they have a hard time deciding what idea is the best. So they say, hey, I like this, and I'm gonna go through it until the end. And I'm like, well, no, have you thought about doing it this way? What about this way? And what about if you do a variation? And then what if you do something like that? So at the end, after having talked to them, they have like 10 ideas in their mind. And that's good, because I like them to think. And so when we meet again, the whole process is for them to be able to either have like 10 sketches on trace paper, 3 models or something like that, or, you know, even a paragraph. I tell them sometimes, write down what you want me to see in the project, or then even give me a presentation. So how do I know that? In the very first weeks, when I'm starting to, you know, get to know them individually and stuff like that, I assess them. You know, in the back of my mind, I say, okay, this person looks like they sketch a lot. They have a sketchbook already. Or this person looks like they talk a lot. Maybe they're good presentation-wise. Or this person looks like they want to create something with their hands. I mean, they already have the materials bought or something like that. So when I go to meet with them, I say, well, what do you want to do? And they would say,
oh, wow. Well, they're like, oh, nobody has asked me what I wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, one of my students was like, oh, I love building. I just love it. And I'm like, well, you're going to give me 3 models by next week. And he was like, well, that's so much. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Just literally cut paper, like literally A4 letter size paper, and then just put it together. And he was like, oh, wow, okay, I had never thought of that. And then someone else too, oh, I like writing. And I was like, well, what if you make a model, and then you can also give me a paragraph of what you think your concept is. So I think that inspiration is more about asking them what they want to do and how to feel comfortable with how their creativity works, and not saying everyone is going to give me 10 drawings and 3 models and blah, 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 because maybe sometimes, you know, they can't do it.
Yeah, it doesn't work for them.
Because they don't feel motivated to do it, because that's just not what they like. So I think that that's definitely the second question. And I forgot what the third one was.
Working student, because none of the students have the time. They don't have the time to be there full time. So it's about thinking forward and applying that adaptability. Basically, the word is adaptability. And since what is happening right now, I also wanted to ask you, what has been your experience moving from something as physical as being in the school, as moving into digitally and teaching digitally? How has that been? How's that experience?
I think that my experience with, and you're right in the sense that, you know, these universities are public universities and colleges, so it is hard sometimes to also assess an individual or a student that literally has a part-time job. So then you understand that, hey, maybe how do I make this person, even though they have work and they have so much stuff to do, how do I, you know, motivate them in order to bring more work to the studio? So that's hard. And then to the question is that it has been hard because, like you said in the beginning, I'm a very analog designer and architect. And to me, the whole idea of sitting with my students and sketching over their plans with trace paper and that feedback and collaboration, it's hard. It's extremely hard when you have to go on Zoom. Like, how do you even do that? But, you know, thankfully, because of technology, Zoom has a little option that has the
draw on top of things.
The draw on top of things. So I tell them, hey, take a picture of your plan or your section, and then, you know, put it on the screen, and I'll draw on top of it. So it's slower.
And how you assess your students and how do you make them inspire. In the show, we always give the narrative the centerpiece. And do you think this is the way, like, how do you apply the narrative part of your education, both professionally and personally, into your projects? So you can take your time to answer.
It is complicated because I feel like there's a different narrative, like how you're saying, for every part of my life. And maybe perhaps I would like to talk about how I start personal projects.
Yeah.
Which I think like it's the easiest narrative for me to think of right now. But how I like to start my own projects when I was back in, you know, architecture school, because I feel like right now at a firm and at an office, they skip the narrative. You know, they give you a narrative and you just have to complete it. But in my personal projects, it's more of I first go to the site of the project. I see the people that go to the project. What is the life like around the site? What can I take from the people? What do they do? You know, are they going to work right now? Are they going to the grocery store? Anything like that. So I'm very observant regarding people. I feel like that's where the psychology thing, that the wants to be a psychology comes from. But, you know, seeing the people, seeing what they do, their lifestyle around the site, it's number one thing for me. Then the second thing is to look for precedents of, the second thing is to look for precedents that apply to the type of category or program that I want to do. So let's say that it's a library. I would go and look for, I don't know, Louis Kahn or Renzo Piano, whatever it is, you know, just to get the sense of what do these amazing architects do and how are they great at building a library or executing a library. So that's the second step. Then the third step would be to sketch out those precedents, to understand them, you know, to know how people move through these spaces. And then the fourth thing would be to just sketch down a ton of ideas, like literally trace paper over trace paper over trace paper, of how do I want to execute my project, thinking about the precedent and also thinking about the people that are gonna be in my site. So usually I sketch, you know, plans with the site in the background. And then next to that, I sketch, I forgot the name of this thing, which is interior designers use it a lot, which is the bubbles. which basically says what do I want the program to be like and what's gonna be around, so you put like kitchen, and then you have like little bubbles coming out of kitchen that say, well, you need a bathroom, and then you need a pantry, and then all that stuff,
Yeah. I know what you're talking about, but I don't know the word either.
Yeah.
You're asking the wrong person.
Exactly. So I tend to do that just so that I let also my writing side come into play, because I like to write and also to draw at the same time, so that I can go back to my writing, look for keywords like, let's say light. Right? So then that would be a part of my concept, and how do I include light into the plan that I'm drawing? And then finally, after I have all these things resolved, I think that the 5th or 6th step would be to finally go and produce digital work. The digital work for me is something that I let it, sit in the background, which some people might disagree, but I feel like I have to know how, if I like what I'm doing, and if I finally say, okay, this idea, I think that this is the one, after I've tried everything else by sketch, because it's just faster and it's easier.
Yeah, it's for you. Yeah.
Exactly. Then I go finally into like, I don't know, Rhino, which is the easiest program, not Revit, because that's crazy. Because I feel like by digital methods, it's gonna take me more time.
Of course.
And that's also what I teach my students, to be able to use 2 different methods. Let's say that you're very into making models, and then you also have to produce something digitally always. Then you should go back to, trying to figure out how things are going to come together very fast with just pieces of paper or like sticks or something like that. And then finally, when you have your answer, you go back to the computer in order for you not to take more time than is needed,
No,
of course. I answered your question.
I think you did. I just think that is interesting, and how I even like looking at you right now, because after all you're telling me, like how you're observant and you're into journalism and you're into architecture, the way that your thought process in the narrative is very layered based. And that's very architectural based. It has very like a structure, a sound structure, and how to move forward. And obviously, like that's what we do in architecture. We start building from the ground up. The way that you tell your narrative, do you feel that before you used to think away in narrative wise differently, and now you think?
I think that before I didn't have a narrative. I feel like architecture just made me more organized and aware of how to organize the ideas,
And Mari, do you think that nowadays, because of the platform, like you already have with the Archiologist, for example, and all these like Instagram feeds and all these like content that we have now in social media, do you think that has helped architecture improve in a way like how it expresses itself? Or
that's a very good question. And I realized that with the Archiologist, I usually post pictures that are finished, basically work that has already been through a process, and basically like renderings or plans that are already finished. They're beautiful, impeccable, perfection. And I just realized that, well, I had realized before, but social media is damaging the way that creatives think about their work and about the content that they produce. Especially because you have all these platforms such as myself that I'm putting forth pictures that are finished. I'm totally skipping the process. But that means that individuals, architects and designers...
in reality, it's kind of not your fault. I just want to defend you here because that's the type of project that people submit to you.
Exactly.
But it's so, because people are just exposing to like, oh, I have to make something amazing as this last person. So let me put my best foot forward and show you something amazing as well. But yeah, I agree in that sense of like the process is being lost, the journey.
Yeah. I think that individuals, back to your point, individuals are skipping the process just because they want to be featured in these platforms, and I have a platform like that myself, so it's about, and I try to do this with the archaeologists, especially when I do talks like this or when I talk to other people in the industry too. I tell them, well, hold on a minute. You should be able to feel confident with the process, with how long it took. It doesn't matter, but the final result is not the best. Now, I share pictures that are finished because of inspiration. How can I achieve that? Well, obviously you have to go through a very big process in order to achieve something like that, So for me, my platform is more about how do I inspire people and motivate them to do these amazing things? But then I feel like individuals in their own creative careers should pay attention to the process and also put that on Instagram. Maybe perhaps by me sharing a beautiful finished picture that you did, a finished project, that a person that feels inspired can go to your profile and see, how did this person do this? Because sometimes people ask me, they're like, do you know what software they use? Do you know?
Yeah, that's another question that I wanted to ask.
Yeah. Do you know if they used any brushes on Photoshop? Do you know what they thought about when they did this? So that's when I also started asking the people sending me these projects to ask them, hey, tell me, how did you think about this? What is the concept behind all of this? What softwares did you use? Because that way you're also going to help someone else that wants to have a finished product like that. But I feel like Instagram is placing a very high priority on finished content, pressure on having something done. And I feel like that's not how life works. That's why people literally compare themselves to someone else daily, because they say, wow, this person has an amazing life, but what did they actually have to do in their life in order to get there, And that's with everything, architecture, design, everything.
That's why I feel so passionate about the narrative and like, why are you doing this? Why do you want to pick this type of composition? Why did we draw it this way? And I think it's also the people and the social media making us our attention span of like, oh, I saw something cool, let me just try to do something like that, but not really think of why they did it. And it's a hard question, because like, how do you make them stop? You have to. I've seen over social medias like Let's Do It Better, that they try to teach people, but at the same time, like you're teaching them, but you're teaching them like how to recreate. And it's not about the inspiration. You're teaching them a tool, okay, and everyone can learn a tool, but it's just what can you do with that? And coming from that rant again.
But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think that we have to teach the people, instead of how do you do that, how to think about, getting to that level. Just like how you were saying, I 100% agree with you. It's about not giving people the how it's done, or the means. Just say, hey, use this software, and you just have to click Control-C and T or whatever. Yeah, like that's not how you're gonna figure out how to do something. But you have to learn how to do these methods. But I feel like it's a psychological thing that designers and professors have to teach their students how to think that way. Ask the right questions. Yeah, that.
Mm-hmm. So I'm moving on, because we're almost at the end. That architects in generally are, or do you think that we're a specialist, or do you think specialists are gonna disappear down the line? Because everyone basically will know a little bit about everything.
Wow. Okay. I like the term generalist, because I want to be able to be a generalist in my life. I don't want to be specialized in anything, because that would mean that I'm missing out on so much knowledge that I can teach, or I can, do something with it. I think that the future architect should not be specialized in anything. For example, there's a lot of people that are only specialized in the hospitality, exactly, or even maritime ports, and just water related architecture. And then there's other people that maybe building technology, and that's completely fine, but then I feel like the future architect needs to know a little bit about everything in order to be a well-rounded architect. And that goes into, just like how you were saying, even social issues that are happening right now, no political issues that are happening right now. The pandemic is an amazing way to learn more about architecture in general. How can architecture help, people that are going through this crazy crisis in times? How can we use that to our advantage? But we need to learn more about politics, about social issues, about psychology, about journalism, presentation skills, everything. We have to know about how things are built. So that would mean like construction related. We have to know about softwares, how things are done and produced, about rendering, about everything. And I feel like architects that don't take that opportunity are missing out, because the future is not just going to be, hey, build me a house. That's not the future of architecture at all. The future of architecture is doing something just like how you're doing, which you're amazing at visualization and telling a narrative. And then you also are trying to inspire others and give them a place to speak their mind, So before, the architect couldn't do that. It was just like, hey, well, we're building the World's Fair in Chicago. Can you put some things up together for me, please? And now it's more like, have you thought about, I don't know, designing shirts? Have you thought about painting murals?
Yeah, branching out. And we are a danger to every other career.
Yes.
Because as architects, we can do that because we learn how to think analytically.
Yes.
In every single aspect of everything, of the whole. And that's why I think it's so, when I heard that term, I was like, but we already are that.
Yeah. Well, there are some people that stick to just one thing, and I feel like that's not healthy. You should be able to expand your knowledge on more and more and more stuff, because the future is not just going to be that. And I have a story that I want to share with your listeners. A friend was telling me, she's a UX UI designer, and she was telling me that in her company, I think it's like a company that sells cars, probably like BMW or something like that. She was telling me that someone had joined her company, a director of design, or a director of product or something like that. And she was telling me, do you know the experience that she has, her background? And I was like, no, tell me. She's like, well, this woman who's already like 40 years old, she's amazing. She's the director of everything here in our company. She actually went to architecture school. And I was like, how is she there? She's like, well, she figured out that, yeah, she likes architecture, but then she thought about, how can I go more in depth about how people use software and how people use websites and all that stuff in a product, such as a car, in order to bring people a better understanding or a better comfortable space in order for them to do that. So how does she apply to people? So that's when she went again to school and had like a 1-year course on like UX UI, and she learned coding. And now, years later, she's like the director of an amazing company, creative director. which is like really good, you know? And this woman has an architecture background. And I just thought that was just like so amazing that people that are in architecture, they just want to learn so much more about the world. You don't have to stick to just building.
Yeah, and that comes from that dreamer facet of us, and that innocence of like how we can make the future better by doing by doing that. But I'm not good at sketching, so I might do something else. And
exactly.
And it's just a nice idea of how we're able to see ourselves in this matter. And I just wanted to, and thank you for answering that question. I think we have time for one more question, the last question. And this is something that...
I'm scared.
The big one, the ultimate one, the one that you won't be able to answer. After our conversation and you remembering your past and after all this that we shared right now, what do you think that architecture has taught you on a personal yours level and identity wise? And do you think if you had the chance with the knowledge that you have today, would you go 5 years in the past or 6 years or whatever years and study architecture all over again?
Would I study architecture all over again?
But you already have this knowledge that you already went through.
I think I would. I definitely would. If I had to, you know, we said here, oh, I like journalism and I like psychology and stuff like that. But the thing is that architecture is such a general career that I feel like if I had chosen a different path, I would feel stuck in a career that has, and this is by no means shaming to people that are like, I don't know, doctors, because I mean, you specialize in something and you can, you know, that's what you're like.
This is just us personally talking as friends.
Exactly.
So people, please don't lash.
So that it's no means at all. But I think that architecture has given me the ability to think more than just building and more than just architecture, that I think that I would definitely do it all over again, just because I think that I've learned so much more that I think it's extremely helpful in my life and my relationships and everything like that. So yeah, I would do it again. Would you?
I would, I think. In that, well, so this answer changes per episode. It's mostly about me. If I already had the knowledge of the future, first of all, I would be thinking like maybe I should have gone to cinematography and just become a super badass cinematographer with the knowledge of an architect already. And I will be like a Kosinski type of style and doing Tron movies before Tron was even made, because I already have the knowledge of the future. So I will be like, hey guys, let me just come here and do this. But I went through the sci-fi route. Again, as always. I think this is a good point to end the episode. Thank you again, Maria, for being here and just talking to me.
No, thank you. Seriously, the questions were amazing. I had such an amazing time doing this. Incredible. Thank you
again. And I hope that you guys enjoyed as well. So please don't forget to go to iTunes and leave those little 5 stars and that little review. That helps us be more found in the community, and this community can continue growing. So once again, I'm your host, Soy Rocío Moreno, saying goodbye. See you in the next episode of Arquitectura. Keep on listening and keep on creating. Thank you. Bye.